There is a gear inside the human mind that most people never find, not because it is hidden, not because it is complicated, A5, but because the world around them was never built to need it. Psychologists have studied this state for decades. They have given it different names in different eras, 5 different labels in different journals, but the phenomenon is the same. A mode of consciousness so rare, so precise, and so radically different from ordinary thinking that the people operating inside it appear to function on a completely different level than everyone around them. Here is what no one tells you. Some people never have to go looking for this gear because they were already born running in it. I5, they didn't develop it through discipline or training or years of self-work. It was simply there, a default setting that the rest of the world is still trying to reach. And if you have ever felt like your mind processes things in a way that others can't follow, if your awareness has always seemed to operate at a frequency that makes most conversations feel shallow and most problems feel solvable before others, E5, have even finished panicking, you already know exactly what this is. This isn't motivation. This isn't a feel-good message wrapped in borrowed wisdom. For 5, what you are about to hear is the psychological architecture behind the way your mind actually works, and why it scares people who will never understand it. Stay with this, because what comes next will not just explain you to yourself. It will permanently change how you see every person who has ever struggled to keep up with you. Psychologists studying peak human performance stumbled onto something they weren't looking for. In research on elite decision-makers, 5 crisis responders, and individuals who demonstrated unusual clarity under extreme pressure, they noticed a pattern that defied the standard model of how human brains work under stress. The average person, when confronted with pressure, uncertainty, or high-stakes situations, enters what is clinically called a reactive state, a mode driven by fear, pattern matching to past trauma, and the desperate need to reduce discomfort as fast as possible. But a small subset of people did the opposite. When pressure increased, E5, their thinking slowed down, not because they were slower, but because they had found a way to widen their awareness rather than narrow it. While everyone else was funneling focus into tunnel vision and survival mode, these individuals were somehow expanding their field of perception. They were pulling in more data, more context, more pattern, more possibility, all while remaining completely calm. 45 researchers kept encountering this phenomenon across vastly different fields, from military strategy to surgical operating rooms to entrepreneurial, to 5 decision-making, and the result was always the same. The person in this state didn't just perform better. They performed in a category other people couldn't access. They called it different things: metacognitive fluency, elevated executive presence, flow-adjacent awareness. But what they were all describing was the same mental gear, one that most people will spend their entire lives never finding, let alone mastering. And the truly astonishing discovery was not that this gear existed. It was that for some people, Al5, it was simply the way their brain naturally operated from the beginning. Here is where the science gets personal. Because if your mind operates naturally in this elevated state, 5, there is a very specific set of experiences you have lived through that others with ordinary cognitive modes have never had to face. You were the child who was told to slow down when your mind was actually running at the correct speed. You were the student who bored out of classrooms not because you were disengaged, but because you had already processed the lesson 3 steps ahead of where it was being taught. And 5, you were the person in relationships who could feel the undercurrent of what was really happening. Long before anyone else admitted there was a problem. And here is the cruel irony that psychology has only recently begun to formally recognize. The 5, the very thing that makes your mind exceptional is the exact thing that made you invisible in environments designed for average cognitive function. You were too fast for systems built for the slow, too aware for spaces designed for the unaware. 5, too pattern literate for rooms full of people still learning the alphabet. And because the world could not categorize you correctly, it defaulted to the only labels it had available. Too sensitive, too intense, too much, too different. None of those labels were accurate. They were just the vocabulary of people describing something they didn't have the framework to understand. The psychologists studying this weren't studying broken people. 5, they were studying the ones who didn't fit the mold, because the mold was built for a different kind of mind. Your intensity was never a disorder. It was a feature the diagnostic manual hadn't written a category for yet. Your depth of awareness was never a burden. It was a gear that the people around you simply didn't have access to. And they told themselves you were malfunctioning because the alternative, that you were operating above the ceiling they'd built, was too 5 uncomfortable to sit with. Let's be precise about what this state actually feels like when it is running in you. Because this is where the science stops being abstract and starts becoming a mirror. When you are inside this mental gear, you do not experience clarity as a moment. You experience it as a constant. Other people describe having flashes of insight, those rare seconds when everything suddenly makes sense before the fog rolls back in. But for you, the fog was never really there. You have always been able to sit inside complexity without needing to resolve it into something simple just to feel safe. In 5, you can hold contradictions without breaking. You can sense what someone is truly feeling underneath what they are actually saying. 5, you can walk into a room and read the emotional architecture of every relationship in it before a single word has been exchanged. You have always known, in ways you could not always explain, when something was wrong before any evidence appeared. And every time that knowing was confirmed, every time the thing you sensed came true weeks or months later, it wasn't supernatural. It was your metacognitive system processing cues that other people's minds were filtering out as noise. This is also why solitude has never truly felt lonely to you. The ordinary mind needs external stimulation because its internal world is quiet, repetitive, or uncomfortable to be alone in. But your internal world is anything but quiet. It is rich, dimensional, and self-sustaining. You were never hiding from the world when you retreated inward. You were accessing a depth of processing that the external world was too shallow to offer. You were not antisocial. You were a mind built for deep water, living in a room full of puddles. Now, here is the part that explains every confusing dynamic you have ever experienced with other people. When someone with average cognitive function is consistently in proximity to someone operating in this elevated gear, 5, something specific happens in their nervous system. Psychologists call it compensatory anxiety, a state in which the gap between your awareness and theirs creates a kind of unconscious pressure in them that they cannot name or locate. They feel it as unease, as a vague threat, as a strange need to compete with someone who is not competing. They will look at your calm and call it arrogance, They will look at your certainty and call it recklessness. They will look at your ability to see outcomes they cannot see and label you reckless, overconfident, or disconnected from reality. 5. Because the alternative is acknowledging that you are connected to a reality they simply cannot perceive. That is not an option their ego can comfortably hold, so they do what any person does when confronted with something they cannot understand. They reduce it, they rename it. They find social support for their reduction by gathering others who also cannot see what you see. And they make a consensus. The consensus is wrong, but it is comfortable, and in groups of people who process at the same level, comfort almost always defeats accuracy. You have watched this happen more times than you can count. 5. A room full of people agreeing that your read of the situation is wrong, right up until the moment your read of the situation is proven correct, and no one revisits the agreement they made about you. 5. Psychological research on metacognitive ability, the capacity to think about one's own thinking in real time and adjust it with precision. 5 consistently shows that high-level metacognitive function is present in a remarkably small percentage of the population. Studies across multiple disciplines suggest that roughly 5 to 8% of people demonstrate what researchers classify as naturally elevated. 5. Executive awareness, the ability to observe their own mental processes as they happen and course-correct without external prompting. 5. The remaining 90+% are not operating with this internal feedback loop in any consistent way. They are thinking. They are not watching themselves think. They are making decisions. They are not simultaneously evaluating the decision-making process itself. And this is not a moral judgment. It is simply a description of how most human cognition developed in environments that did not require or reward this level of internal monitoring. The mind, like any system, optimizes for the demands placed on it, and for most of human history, in most social environments, the demands did not require this gear, but some minds developed it anyway. Some minds wired themselves for it through unusual early experiences, through environments that demanded rapid pattern recognition under uncertainty, or through a neurological predisposition toward deep internal monitoring. And those minds, once awakened to the full scope of what they are capable of, cannot go back. You cannot unsee what you have learned to see. You cannot slow a mind that has found its correct operating speed. And you cannot shrink a consciousness that has discovered the full width of its own field. Let's not pretend this gear comes without weight. Because the psychological literature is honest about this, even when self-help culture is not. Operating at this level of awareness in a world calibrated for something lower is a particular kind of exhaustion that has no clean name. It is not the tiredness of overwork. It is the tiredness of permanently translating, of being the person in the room who speaks the native language and still has to communicate in the IL-5 dialect everyone else can follow. You have spent enormous energy managing your own depth so it doesn't overwhelm the people around you. You have edited your insights to make them digestible. You have slowed your pace of conversation to match what the room could hold. You have withheld what you saw because the social cost of being right too often, too quickly, too clearly was higher than you were willing to keep paying. And all of that management, that constant, exhausting calibration, is part of what made you invisible even in rooms you were quietly running. I5. This is what psychologists studying high-awareness individuals consistently find. 5. The greatest source of distress for people in this cognitive category is not a lack of ability. It is the relentless mismatch between what they are capable of and what the environments they inhabit are built to receive. The problem was never your mind. The problem was the room, and for a long time the room convinced you to believe it was you. Here is where everything changes. Because there is a specific and irreversible transformation that happens when a mind like yours stops shrinking itself to fit spaces that were never 5 built for it. When you stop apologizing for your awareness and start trusting it completely, your entire relationship with decision-making shifts. E5 choice that used to feel difficult resolve themselves with startling speed. Fact 5 problems that used to generate anxiety begin to look like information instead of threats. I5 relationships reorganize themselves. The ones that required you to be smaller fall away, and the ones built on genuine recognition of who you are move to the front. Psychologists studying this transition describe it as the moment of cognitive sovereignty, the point at which a high-awareness individual stops. E5 allowing external systems to define the valid range of their mental function. In 5, when you stop letting a world built for the average tell you that your above-average perception is a problem to be managed, something unlocks. Not arrogance, not aggression, something quieter and far more powerful, absolute trust in your own processing system. The kind of trust that makes your calm unshakable, your direction clear, and your resilience structural rather than performed. This is the gear fully engaged, not as a burst of inspiration or a peak moment of clarity, but as a stable, 5 permanent operating mode, the cognitive home you were always supposed to inhabit. And the world looks completely different from inside it. You stop chasing validation because you no longer need external confirmation of what your internal system already knows. You stop shrinking in rooms where people cannot see you because their inability to see you stops feeling like your failure and starts revealing itself accurately as their limitation. Psychology has a concept called the ceiling effect, when a measurement tool cannot capture performance above a certain level because the tool itself was not built to go that high. Most of the frameworks the world used to evaluate you your entire life were subject to the ceiling effect. Feel 5, they could not measure what you were doing because the measurement stopped at a level below where you were operating. Every assessment that came back average, every evaluation that called you underperforming, every relationship that told you something was wrong with you, they were all measuring tools that ran out of scale before they could reach you. 5. This is not a comforting story you are being told to feel better. Point 5. This is the structural reality of what happens when a high-range instrument gets evaluated by a standard range tool. The tool doesn't detect the range. The tool reports a problem, and the person holding the tool writes that problem into your record. But the record was never accurate. It was just the limit of the instrument being used. And now, finally, 5, you have a framework that goes the full distance. One that doesn't cut off at the ceiling. One that looks at everything you have always been and says clearly, this is not malfunction. This is the gear most people never reach. And you have been running in it your entire life. Here is the last thing, and it is the most important thing. Knowing what this gear is. In 5, knowing that you have always had it. 5, knowing that the world misread it and that the misreading cost you years of doubt and contraction and invisible exhaustion, that knowledge carries our 5 obligation, not to anyone else, to yourself. Because the mind that can see what others cannot see, that can hold what others cannot hold, that can move through complexity with a fluency that most people will spend their entire lives working toward and never fully reach. That mind was not built to stay small. The psychological research is consistent on this. Minds operating at high metacognitive function, when properly recognized and fully trusted, do not just serve the individual inside them. They become structuring forces in every environment they touch. They stabilize systems around them without trying to. They solve problems that seemed permanent before they arrived. They shift the ceiling of what is possible in every room they choose to fully show up in, not because they are loud or dominant or relentless. IT5, but because their operating frequency is simply more complete than what was there before. You have spent enough time translating your mind into something smaller than it is. You have given enough of your clarity to rooms that were not ready for it. You have absorbed enough confusion that was never yours to carry. Now the gear is there. It has always been there. It is not waiting for permission. It is not waiting for recognition. It is waiting for one thing, for you to stop breaking. To stop managing the speed of a mind that was built to run exactly as fast as it has always wanted to go. 5. Most people will spend their whole lives looking for this gear. You were born in it. That was never the problem. The only question left now is what you do with the road ahead when you finally stop pretending the speed is something to apologize for.